Yes.
Okay.
And basically, there we
I
go.
remembered. Yay.
So basically, just to be honest, the things I talk about are the things that I'm having conversations with myself about right now. So I always have to tell people that, like, whenever I speak or whenever I'm having even a conversation with friends, I'm really saying, hey, this is what's on my heart right now. This is what I'm really trying to be intentional about. And so wholehearted living is something that honestly, I probably will always need to have as a focus. It's a lot easier for me to push and to prove than it ever is for me to pause. So I think that's
good.
always,
Say that again. Say that again.
it's easier for me to push and to prove than it ever is for me to pause. So I'm not sure if you feel, I'm not sure if you ever feel that way, but I'm also in a really interesting time. I left a corporate job I had been with for over a decade, where really my main goal those 10 years was just to take the next job that paid more. No matter what they asked, no matter whether it was going back to operations or coming back to HR, I just always said yes and just kept pushing and grinding. And I think that felt more comfortable to me than ever stopping to say, is this a good fit? Am I living up to the person that I want to be? Hey, is this even healthy for me? And so finally in May, I hit the pause button and I left. And it's been really interesting these last few weeks because I'm learning in a different way. And most of the time, I'm not learning by doing, I'm learning by undoing. And let me tell you, it's a lot more uncomfortable to figure out how to undo than it is to figure out how to grow. And so this is kind of what's been on my heart this week. But really, it's been a message that I've struggled with for a really long time. Partially, I think because the corporate world didn't think that rest and play was okay. And honestly, because I stopped playing. I don't know if any of you are moms and maybe you're great at it. I am not. I feel like it's easier for me to be the mom that says, you guys go play, I got to clean the kitchen, and then to sit down and to navigate a game of Uno. So I am realizing that these times where I'm uncomfortable are really the moments that I need the most. So we're going to jump in and just talk about what wholehearted living is. And then we're going to go through some of the guideposts of wholehearted living, because I think it's a lot easier to identify when you're over here versus when you're living over there, when we give you a few examples, and hopefully we can just talk through some of those. So am I true? And it's so funny because even since, even emails to me, I'm like, oh, I don't want to answer an email when I used to answer hundreds of emails a day. So give me a second to remember how to even share like a PowerPoint on here.
Oh, I have to make you a co-host.
Okay.
Oh, please. While I'm doing that, one of the things you said about undoing and growing, and I, just because it fits the metaphor, and I was just talking about this to somebody the other day too, a client the other day, is in order to make something grow and flourish, oftentimes you have to deadhead things, you have to pull some weeds, and then out west, they like burn fields, right, to foster growth. But it is the more uncomfortable piece of thing, but it is in nature even a part of growth. So yes. I'm excited about the journey that you're on.
Yeah. And one of my favorite quotes, and I read it a couple of years ago, and it didn't hit home until I actually experienced it for myself. It's really this, phrase that just says, barn burnt down, now I can see the moon. And I remember I read that and was like, I could kind of picture that. But then I was actually driving on a road trip to Indy to work, and I had so much anxiety about going. And I remember driving and just stopping at a gas station and pulling up the Verbo app, like 60-mile radius. What is something that is on like 5 acres I put in, plus has water, plus has a hot tub. and up popped this little place, and it was the cutest little like red shack. And it said it was like 40 miles away. And so I called my boss and I said, hey, I'm going to need to change my travel schedule. I won't be coming up this week. And I texted my mom and I said, hey, I'm not going to Indy. I'm going to insert little town name that know about. And I took a detour and I went. And as soon as I pulled up, here was this cute little red shack by this little lake. But then right next to it was the place they had burnt down, some old, terrible barn to build this little red barn. And I was like, that's exactly what I just did. I had to burn something down and stop for a second to be able to even have the right perspective to say, what's healthy for me? What do I need right now? So yeah, there's something you need to burn. It's a good time.
I love it.
Okay, let's see here. All right. Let's see if I can get you in a prettier view here. There we go. Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here's the definition from Brene Brown on what wholehearted living is. So like we're in third grade or something, I'm just going to read it. But as we read it, I'd love for you to just think about, does any of this stand out to you? And then I'll just kind of hear your thoughts. So wholehearted living is about engaging our lives from a place of worthiness. It means cultivating the courage, compassion, and connection to wake up in the morning and think, no matter what gets done or just left undone, I am enough. And it's going to bed at night thinking, yes, I am imperfect and sometimes I'm afraid, but that does not change the truth that I'm also brave and worthy of love and belonging. So to me, and I'll go first, when I first found this definition of wholehearted, it was actually in the training certification with Brene Brown. And we were going through this activity of choosing our values. And I'm sure you guys have done values exercises. There's all different kinds of ways you can do them. But actually through the Dare to Lead curriculum, we choose our values based off of what will help me get up when I fall. Not if I fall, but it's inevitable, right? That we go through hard and that we make mistakes and that we fail and that we fall. And it really changed my perspective because I think especially as a mom, when you go through a values exercise, you kind of feel guilty when you don't put family or kids, right, as one of your main values. And so for me, thinking about what would help me get up, number one was gratitude, because gratitude gives me perspective. And when things are hard, usually that's the first thing I need is a better, more positive perspective. But the other thing that I've always struggled with was this idea of no matter how hard I worked during the day, every single night I would have the same thoughts as I laid in bed. And those thoughts centered around what I didn't do well enough, what I should have done more of, what I wanted to do differently tomorrow. And I always said the nighttime version of me is the best version. Like it's the one who felt bad for telling the kids, no, you got to go to bed. Don't get up one more time so I could go back and answer more emails, right? It was the thoughts that I would have and who I wanted to be that I wanted to carry over to the next day. But my nights normally were just honestly thoughts of guilt and not good enough. And so when I read this definition in the class, I realized, okay, wholeheartedness is the other value I need to pick me back up and to remind me that it's not about everything I get done. It's really about knowing who I am. So this whole idea of just thinking about everything that I didn't do was really the definition that I needed then to be able to cling on to more than anything. So as you read this definition, anything stand out to you about this idea of wholehearted living?
I'll start while people are thinking. I experience and know 100% truth that this is an ongoing pursuit. So I think we read books and we go through classes thinking we're going to get it. And some days I am stellar at this, like so proud of how good I am at it. And on those days you think, oh, good, I got it. And it could be 48 hours later and I am in the trenches, kind of completely lost it, that feeling, all of it. And I'm texting Alissa or somebody and saying, you know, this sucks, this is awful. And so to me, wholehearted living is always it's like the pursuit of wholehearted living. And sometimes you get there and sometimes you move away based on the context and the circumstances, both just in our own minds as well as externally what's happening or not happening to us or for us.
Yeah, no, I like that. It's a pursuit. And we'll keep that in mind as we go through the guideposts, because I think that's a great way to think about it.
When she said a pursuit, that's kind of where my mind was going, because the sentence of waking up in the morning and no matter what gets done or what I leave undone, I'm enough. I believe that, but like, that is definitely not how I start my day or approach my day. It's usually all of the things I do need to get done and all of the things that are, and that's what makes me have a successful day.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you, or maybe just raise your hand if you're one of those people who has the checklist, right? Like you have I have a million little pads that will organize that for me. But then if you do something that's not on your checklist, you go and write it down just so you can check it off. Like maybe that's just me. I don't know. That was me. And at the end of the day, that's how I was evaluating my worth, was how many checks were there? How long was the list? How much was done? So I totally get that, Becky.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, when I read this, I see all the statements about, you know, I am enough and no matter what gets done or how much is left undone. And it's all these I statements. And I feel like I wake up in the morning and before I go to bed, I'm thinking about all the things that I need to do for everybody else. And I'm laying in bed thinking about all the things I didn't get to for other people. Like last night, I was laying in bed thinking, oh gosh, I need to write a thank you note because somebody sent us baby clothes and I need to get the car packed for this weekend's trip and for the baby and my husband. And it's like, you know, I'm thinking about the things that I should be doing for other people and not for myself. So I feel like for wholehearted living, you know, it's really about centering back with yourself, finding yourself again. And as a mom, I am like managing everybody else and forgetting me.
Yes. Yes.
Danielle, how old yours is? Little baby? How old?
10 months.
Girl, there's no more time when they're more dependent than that.
It's like every minute.
Yeah.
He's at daycare right now, but thank God for daycare.
Yeah. Give yourself some grace in that time frame, because yes, you should have a little bit of time to fill your cup back up so you've got something to give. But you know, parenting is a long, long, long journey, and there will come a day. Speaking of that, bye, 22-year-old son going to work. There will come a day when they make their own turkey sandwich and wipe their own butt and tie their own shoes, and you will feel like you have just received like years of your life back. There will just be this like, what am I going to do with all this free time? And then it'll get consumed with their sports and activities, and you'll go through another like, when am I ever going to get come back? So I'm honoring that feeling that you have, that you're not doing it wrong, that you have a 10-month-old baby that doesn't walk or eat or do anything without you.
Yeah.
Very true.
I think
Carrie joined us.
Yeah, I think the piece, I know I'm trying, I figure I might want to make you guys motion sick on video. You see this like trees going by.
Good.
The part that stands out to me, I'm just reading through it again. wake up in the morning and think, no matter what gets done, how much is left undone, I am enough. Like just kind of where I am right now, there's so much going on. And that is not, I do not have that feeling very often that it's enough. It's always like, oh my God, I'll wake up and for the first like 5 seconds, I'm like, oh, it's a new day. And then all of a sudden I'm like, like, and it's not bad. It's not, it's not necessarily bad stuff. Just a lot, like with work and like with my job and some sort of new business ventures that we're looking at, and we're selling our house and building a new house, and like it's just kind of everything. So I think it's just that ability to just pause, right? The world is not going to fall apart. It's all going to get done, but it's not, I'm not in that place of like, oh yeah, it's fine. Very rarely am I in that place, at least immediately.
Yeah. And I so resonate with that because I think, and somebody posted something about like adulting is basically waiting for the next big thing to be done so you can replace it with the next big thing, talking about like, yeah, but as soon as I get to Friday, but then next week it's just something else. And so for me, part of it too is, hey, even when, it sounds like you've got a lot of awesome things going on. I hear new business ventures, building a house, like those are all awesome things. How do we not lose the joy in those moments? Because we can still have the productivity, but how do we also have joy? Because then we're carrying it differently as well. Mm-hmm. So let's look at some of the guideposts, because to me, this is what's really helpful. I remember having this aha moment of wholeheartedness and being like, that's it. That's what I'm missing. But then I really quickly switched to, okay, well, hold on, tell me how to do it. Like, how do we really make this happen? And Danielle, when I heard you describing kind of those thoughts that you have at night, this to me kind of becomes the goal, the way that you can start to evaluate your day instead. And this is actually what I did this week, where I kind of got this list back out because I was like, okay, I'm navigating this all wrong. And when I even kind of put this image together, if you can kind of tell, the left-hand side, it's going to cause you to walk in one direction. The right-hand side, it causes you to walk in a different direction. And so that's kind of why these are guideposts, basically saying, hey, whatever you choose, that's the way you're going. And so to me, it's not necessarily as much about the act, the behavior. To me, that's kind of step 2. Step 1 is you getting to choose your own priorities here. And we might not be able to do all of these in a day, a week, or even a month. But I think it is good sometimes to say, hey, out of all of this, what's something that's super important to me today? And one thing that I have given up for a while now is creativity. And so yesterday, and my fingers, you probably can't really see them, but are still blue and purple from tie-dyeing shirts with my daughter because she got this tie-dye kit for her birthday. And all of a sudden I went around the house, everything that was white, we've tie-dyed. Anything that was plain white, it is now tie-dyed. And we made the biggest mess. But what I forgot about was what a cool feeling it is to see something that turned out unique because I did it. And so creativity is something that I have to really create intention and space around. Play and rest, that's another one that's big for me. I was a single mom for several years, and it's kind of a joke that when I first decided to have kids, I said to my now ex-husband, okay, fine. I remember it was after my 30th birthday, and I said, fine, we can do this kid thing. But you got to swear to me that I can sleep every Saturday morning until 10 o'clock. Like, I love sleep. I always have loved sleep. Well, that promise did me a heck of a lot of good, right? And there was probably nothing I was more mad about than, and my kids were 2 and 5 at the time, when they would come in at 6:15 on a Saturday morning. And I hated life. And at the same time, I hated them, to be honest. Because girl needed sleep. I really did. And so I started this new tradition of on Friday nights, I would go and get donuts. I would put their cups of milk already in the fridge. And I would say, don't wake mommy up. Eat all the donuts you want. Your milk is there. and I will see you at 10. And it worked. And I felt really guilty about it. And I didn't tell people that story for a while until I realized I've got to teach my kids how to rest. And if they grow up hearing me say, it's okay to rest, it's okay to ask for help so I can rest, it's okay for mom to be alone. It's, if I am having those conversations, that's the only way they're going to learn it too. So we still have these conversations about it's okay for me to rest, but now they're mostly around, I am not your chef or your maid. Like, it's okay that I still sit here. You can get that yourself. So those are two big ones that kind of stick out for me, along with meaningful work. I was really staying in this place of supposed to. I got stuck in supposed to as a single mom who was supposed to provide for these kids, who didn't really know if I could do a business on my own. And so I kept living the corporate life. And what that did was cause me to walk this way, away from meaningful work. So these are really, like I said, guideposts that help you decide which way am I going to go? Who am I going to be? And then you can start to figure out what that looks like for you, because this is also the beauty of it. Only you can do these things your way. What looks like creativity to me will look different to you. What looks like meaningful work to me looks different for you. So first we start kind of by saying, hey, what are the things I need to let go of? What are the things I want more of? And then you can step into figuring out, how does that look for you? So enough about me. Let's talk about you and maybe some of these guideposts. What's speaking to you or standing out to you right now?
Hey, while they're thinking about that, the meaningful work thing, it's funny because I just led a session about value, relevance, and meaning in your day-to-day work right before this. And one of the things I want to just state, because sometimes I think, and even when I was in corporate too, I learned how to find meaning in my work on my own, because we don't have as much control over our work when we're in the corporate setting. And I don't want people to think that you have to quit and go off on your own to find meaningful work, because sometimes it can feel like that big of a trap. And Alissa, quite frankly, yours was. But anywho, that toxic work environment. Even if you just know how your work has human to human impact and not necessarily focus on just the emails and the checklists and the meetings and the projects. So one example quickly, one of my clients, she was having a conversation with a young executive and helping him kind of get onboarded. And we were talking about it and how that felt good to her. And I said, well, what kind of impact do you think that had on him? We were talking about how her work has meaning, even in the day-to-day grind of the work. And she said, well, it can help him sell more faster. He's going to know the industry better. And I said, great. And I said, and then what does that help him do? How does he go home at night because you've equipped him in that way? And what it got to, the short answer is that when he went home more confident, he was a better husband and father and friend and loved going home to spend the evening, versus when you go home insecure about a new job and afraid that you're not going to be enough and not going to get there quickly enough. So sometimes meaningful work is just recognizing the human impact that we have with that email or with that project or with that strategy. So I just want to give that little bit of context.
Well, and I've been realizing, so this summer I've decided it really is about my kids. I have never had a summer just with them and not getting up every day and going somewhere or working or traveling. And so I also, in order to do that, had to realize that my kids are meaningful work, that that matters more, honestly, than anything. And that to me, this is the work that probably I will look back on years from now and realize was one of the best times of my life. Now, does it feel that way every day? No. But that's something that I have to remind myself that this work matters too.
That's good. That's good. All right, back to y'all.
I think for me, I'm not quite here yet. And Rebecca knows I'm trying to change my career to get to a place with more creativity and things like that. But in my existing role, we just did some training and they really emphasized doing team building activities. company just implemented focus Fridays. So no meetings after noon. And so that we can get off of the screens, turn our video cameras off, catch up, go do what we need to do, and just really have a life back. And so, trying to incorporate those things in every day. So far that's added, a little more, seeing play and rest in there. Like that one's really standing out to that rule. But yeah, I think eventually I hope to get more of those flags headed that way, but not quite. on the way. It's a journey.
Yeah. And I think, just to think about, like you were saying about the thoughts that you have at night, use some of these guideposts to be able to focus on, instead of thinking about your to-do list for tomorrow, make your nighttime routine replaying the great moments of the day. And when you don't have those, that's kind of a good gut check to come back to something like this, to be able to say, okay, when did I take time to play and rest? Or, hey, when did I stop and say, hey, I need a moment of calm? Or, hey, you know what? I did this, and that was really more of a sign of self-compassion than me doing it right and perfect. Just kind of making these the new indicators of how you're evaluating how the day went, versus focusing on what was not done and what you need to do tomorrow.
Got it. I like that.
Good.
I've taken myself off video. I couldn't get the audio to work without blasting you through my Bluetooth, guys. So sorry, I'm dialed in now.
You're good.
Rebecca's hurt. She and I've talked a little bit. Like I'm in a place kind of with my day job, so to speak, that I don't know, having a little trouble finding meaningfulness. Right? I know it's important, and I know what I've been hired to do and all that, but just very, very personally, I have a little bit of a jaded kind of attitude about it, and I'm not that into it right now, quite frankly. And part of it, I think, as I had mentioned, my partner and I are looking at some sort of entrepreneurial ventures in California, and some things with where our construction company or his business. So I think part of it is because I'm dipping my toe in some water that allows me to use my whole brain and is not just glued to email and questions about Ritz cheese, like what my day life actually is. And I think it's probably been like, oh, this has been missing. And Alicia, like when you mentioned kind of what your 10 years look like of just say yes, just say yes, just say yes, that's exactly what the first 15 years. Well, actually, probably since I got out of college. Like you could look at my resume and be, wow, like she's done a lot of shit, but it was just say yes, say yes, say yes. And it's not bad, but now I'm at a place where that pause and like, what? Okay, back it up, like pump the brakes here, folks. So it's a muddy place to be, because it concerns me, because I don't feel like I'm showing up. Well, I know I'm not showing up my whole self to the job that actually pays me right now. And that's not okay. So just trying to find the energy or the wherewithal or the, I don't know, muster up the whatever hello it takes to do that, while I can still develop what's going on, kind of the side hustle, if you will, to see if how that's going to pan out. So it's just this tough balancing act right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. And, one of the things that I've been playing around with, and if I ever get the chance to sit and have a conversation with Brene, I'm going to ask about, but I don't know that she put these all in a specific order, as if you have to be able to do this one first before you can get to this one. But I think when we look at this list of everything that we're either letting go of or cultivating, to me, I can make sense of why they're in this order. So, my suggestion would be, if you can carve out a little bit of time to just sit down and have a conversation with yourself on, hey, how often am I being authentic? Or is what other people need from me or think of me driving kind of how I show up every day? Then moving down the list, right? Like, how often am I showing myself compassion? Am I doing what I need to do versus how am I trying to, I always say I'm better at making it all look good than actually being good. So that's how I would kind of look at perfection versus self-compassion. And then how, so I think if you go down this list, right, if you don't have time to be able to do those things for yourself, then it's really hard to feel resilient, right? To keep going despite the adversity that comes up every day. If we're not intentional about making sure we have joy present in our lives, then that makes it really hard to feel fulfilled in the life we're having. Like, just to go down this list and to be able to say, there's a lot of things that really happen before we're even able to get to the place of sometimes recognizing or doing meaningful work. And so I only say that to you because maybe it's hard. And maybe it's not the place to jump right into, is to the meaningful laughter. And honestly, the reason I first started thinking about this was because the very last one on the list is laughter, song, and dance. And while it sounds great, and I would love to be that kind of person who wakes up in the morning laughing and dancing and singing, it takes a lot to get me to that place. It takes something big. And really, it takes probably every single one of those things above it happening for me to even feel like life is worthy some days of song and dance. So I just say that because, again, it's a journey. And that's why if we can look for some small moments, if you at the end of the day, you can say, you know what? Yeah, it was a really good call that instead of pushing through and continuing on those 5 hours of calls every day, I took that 30 minutes and I went and I walked the parking lot at work instead. That actually was the kindest thing I could have done for myself today. Or even just, the intuition and trusting faith. Gosh, when we skip over even stopping to ask ourselves, what feels like me? Or, yeah, you know what? I actually called 4 different people to ask them what I should do or what they think of the situation, but I haven't even stopped for 5 seconds to ask myself, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? These are all really good things and places to start. So maybe think about which one feels like it would get you started in a way that kind of leads you back to you.
And I want to comment on that intuition and trusting faith too, because sometimes the discomfort of a current career like you're feeling, Carrie, and you felt for some time, Alissa, is how you get further to the right. It's that inner knowing that may not look on the outside logical or timely, or it may not make sense. But if there's something about your intuition or something about your interest that's pulling you in a different direction or saying this is no longer meaningful and satisfying to me, intuition and trusting faith is just as important to our lives as our degrees and our certifications and the external validation. It's more important than those.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and we don't get told that a lot. We talk about that a lot here, but that's not something we don't, and like if you go in at least most places, right, if there's, career development workshops and leadership development, anything like that, it's been rare that I've ever heard the word intuition used, much less in this capacity, right? It's kind of, you're supposed to follow the breadcrumb trail, and there's no intuition in the breadcrumb trail.
Well, in January, you can buy my book and give it to people because there's a whole chapter on intuition. And I just found a publisher, so you'll be able to share the word.
Well, and so I write about that too, which is why Rebecca and I can't really compare writings right now, which I haven't even gotten to talk to her about that. When you sent that proposal, I read the first paragraph. I was like, oh, nope, I can't read this. I can't read it because we need to, when both books are done, be able to talk and compare. Not right now.
That's a thing. That's a thing.
Yeah. But, intuition is one of those things that we really only really get when we don't listen. It's one of those things I think people think is fluffy, right? When people talk about knowing and intuition. And, even for me growing up, I grew up in a very spiritual household. that idea of listening to yourself or intuition was actually something that was not valued. It was something that I was kind of taught really was wrong. And so I think I suppressed it for a really long time. And then I only started realizing that when I didn't listen to my intuition, that's when regret would show up. So I started paying attention to the moments of regret and started tying that back to what I knew. And that let me see, oh my gosh, I knew I wasn't supposed to go there, or I knew I wasn't supposed to do that, or I knew I was supposed to say this. And so I think if you're questioning, gosh, how do I even start on that journey of knowing for myself, or even saying, hey, what does my intuition sound like? Because I think that's the other thing we don't talk about. My intuition does not sound, look, or feel like yours does. Just in the same way we talked about the meaningful work. And so some of this is really just about pulling way back and getting to know you. And that's the first step, knowing yourself before you can even step into any of these things. But if intuition is something that you're more curious about and you want to try to cultivate more of that, start by paying attention when you feel regret. Because then you can take those little steps back to maybe some signs you had that you didn't pay attention to.
That actually resonates a lot with me, because I put let go of, I just jotted down like the top 3 that came to my mind. And one of them was the need for certainty. And that's really interesting that you use regret, because I find from a work perspective, not necessarily a personal perspective, that my need for certainty and knowing all. And I think that probably goes to the other one of perfectionism and being cool and in control are my top 3. Yeah. That when I don't speak up, or I don't go with my gut, or I don't go outside of what I think is certain or what I know to be certain, is when I find I have regrets. Like, I wish about that. I was thinking that, and damn it, why didn't I say it? Like, that's happening the most for me from a work position. And so I've been trying to be more intentional about listening. Also, like, there's nothing stupid. Like, I can't say anything really stupid. So to have that space, like, just say it, and then, okay, maybe I'll regret it later, but like, to not say it's worse, I think.
Yeah. And for me, I always put that, because this is really kind of how I think about everything. I see everything as, okay, well, it's either this or that. All right, which way am I going? Mostly because I went through a really long period of time where I didn't have the answers and I didn't have the confidence to really know. And so I kind of saw life as like rolling the dice. Okay, which one am I going to choose? Or flipping the coin, right? And so for me, what really set in was it's either risk or regret. There's not much in between. And I would much rather choose the risk. I feel like I can carry the risk. I feel like it is way too heavy for me to carry regret. And at least when there's risk, we learn something, right? With the regret, to me, it takes a lot longer to process and to go through, and it feels heavier, and it tells me things about myself that I don't like. But with risk, that gives me something to be proud of. Hey, but I went for it. Hey, but I tried. Hey, I shared my idea. Who cares if they didn't pick it up? Risk is easier for me to navigate than regret. And so I think sometimes you have to say, okay, if this is the way I'm going, then what do I have to be a lot more comfortable with? So maybe think about, how do you get more comfortable with risk? Because I think that will give some freedom to you to realize, oh, that's really all I'm doing. I'm just taking a risk, and I would choose that over feeling regret. Something that, you can say to yourself in that moment that allows you to keep going, in your own words. But I think that's helpful.
That would be an interesting thing to explore, like getting like that self-awareness around risk or aversion to, and then finding a way to get more comfortable with it, right? Like something you can spot in the moment, like, oh, that's what this is rearing its head.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting discussion.
Yeah. Well, and I think here's one thing to remember. Rebecca kind of talked about, we feel like we'll just learn this and we'll get done and we'll get better. And then it'll be over and we'll move on to the next thing. A lot of times, whether it's risk or whether it's something like being vulnerable, I think the thing we have to remember is that it will feel the same every time. Even if you start doing it and you feel confident in choosing the risk instead, and that's the right call, your body is still going to feel the same. At work, people used to say, I mean, I would get all of the worst jobs. I remember the year I had to fire our corporate chaplain. And I remember saying, do you remember this? Because I was like, no. I need Jesus in my life. Like, I can't do this. I can't fire the preacher. Okay. But it was because everybody said, oh, you're so good at conflict. You love hard conversations. You're so good at it. And nobody loves that. Nobody loves that. Nobody says, oh, I can't wait to deliver bad news or to have a really tough conversation. But what I think people saw in me was that I could manage the emotions and the way that my body would react in hard situations. Because I would go into it knowing this is going to suck. I'm going to feel like shit when I leave. If I know I'm doing this today, I can't wear a white shirt. I'm going to pit out in seconds. I know that's going to happen, right? My face is going to turn bright red and they're going to know I'm uncomfortable. Like, however our body reacts, we can't change that. Our body knows we're going through hard. And so I just say that because sometimes we listen so much to what we're feeling or what our body's doing. And that can change what we think, that can change our intuition. That can say, oh no, this doesn't feel good. That means I'm not supposed to do it. When we have to become comfortable, to me, I'm like, oh, I'm sweating. All right, this is good. I'm about to do good work. That's what I have to tell myself now, or I have to say, oh, there goes my heart. My heart's, yep, it knows I'm about to have a tough conversation. My heart knows first, but I'm okay. It's just that my heart knows first. And so pay attention to that. Don't let sometimes those feelings dictate your choices or your actions. Instead, let those become part of your knowing that, okay, yep, my body's doing this. So, because Becky, that's going to happen. You're going to have this idea pop into your head and you're going to be like, okay, as soon as they step back, I'm going to share my idea, but your body's going to go ahead and start before you stop talking, which could cause you to say, oh, that probably means I shouldn't say that. Oh, no, I feel too yucky. I'm feeling too hot. My mouth's too dry. I shouldn't speak up. Instead, just say, this is what's supposed to happen. Yep. This is what it's going to feel like when I start to speak. And just try to normalize those feelings instead of suppress them. Because I think we just need to talk about that part more, like those feelings and the way our body reacts, they probably aren't going to change. Just don't let that dictate your choices.
Mm-hmm. And Alissa has talked to us about, when we don't process those emotions in a healthy way, they'll resurface somewhere else and cause ourselves either physical issues in our body, or they'll just surface in a weird way. We're not ready for them and we don't know how to handle them. I just had that conversation of a client that got fired last week. Mm-hmm. And it's a messy deal. And today, what I said to her was, feel it. Let's just not get stuck there, because she was going to just stay so busy that she wasn't even going to deal with it. She was just going to action it away. And I was like, I think we need to process the emotions associated with this sucked and you were wronged, and be angry. Get these emotions out. Like, that's a part of the process.
I've heard that described as it's kind of like whack-a-mole, right? You whack it, the little thing on one side, and then it pops out and comes out sideways on the other. And generally, every time it pops up somewhere else, it's a little bit worse.
Yep. Or in a completely inappropriate time with the wrong people, and you lost your shit, and they're like, what is wrong with her? 2 weeks ago, I didn't deal with.
Yeah, exactly. So I know we're closing up here. I just want to share one more thing, which is so funny. I mean, I could probably every day just talk about Brene Brown quotes. She gives us so much good to work with. But I want to talk through this play and rest part, because I already mentioned this is the one that's the hardest for me. And when you look at it here on the list, right, we see the opposite of play and rest is exhaustion is a power symbol, and productivity tells us our self-worth. So this is getting back to our little checklist. How many checks were there? How good were we today? And I'm not sure if any of you have experienced this. I have experienced this personally and professionally. And I always wonder if it's just like the age that I am. So 40s. Was it because my parents were raised to know and to say that hard work is what gets you where you need to go, right? Like you want to be the first one in the office and the last one to leave. That's what's going to get you the promotion. Or, hey, it's not about being the smartest, it's who works the hardest. I mean, there were so many things that I grew up hearing. But then early in my corporate career, early 20s, really all the bosses that I had were similar age to my parents, and they were doing the same thing. I remember I had just had my first baby and it was 5:15 and I was leaving the office, and my boss said, "Oh, I see. Now that you had a kid, you're on banker's hours." And I will never forget that ever, because really what he was saying to me was, now that you have a kid, I've kind of given up on you and you're not going to be doing as much as you were. And I really saw my career change there for a little while. And there was some real judgment that I was coming in at a certain time and leaving at a certain time, instead of putting in way more hours than were required of me. And so I think I had a lot of undoing to do in that area as well. So I don't know if that resonates with you, this idea of exhaustion as a power symbol. But it's something that you can't pick up play and rest until you put productivity down. You just can't do both at the same time. So this is one of the things, and let's see, let me move this because I can't even see my whole thing there. There we go. So if we want to live a wholehearted life, we have to become intentional about cultivating rest and play. And we must work to let go of exhaustion as a status symbol and productivity as self-worth. And to me, this is always my gut check, honestly, because it's hard to find other things that make you feel worthy. And that's where I've started looking to the right list of those guideposts as indicators of my self-worth over how much I have accomplished. So I want to end today just by having you think about what is something that you would love to be an example of self-worth over productivity. When you go to bed at night and you're replaying the day, what is something that you want to say you are proud of, and that is a reflection of your self-worth over anything that was what you accomplished or what you did not accomplish? What matters most to you?
I think my personal and my professional might be a little different, but since I'm in my office right now, I'm thinking for mine. And I feel like most important to me is, I don't know how to say this properly, but like when I actually get to network and talk to people, like I had coffee this morning. I feel like that was my most accomplished part of my entire day, was going out for coffee with an old marketing director friend that I had and just shooting the shit about it. Like it allowed me to pause for a minute and like just be and talk. And then I came back and there was like a couple emails that came out of that coffee, and it like just opened my mind a little bit differently to something. I don't know, it's that, and I literally feel like I accomplished more just in that hour conversation than I really did for the rest of the day of work.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's really good. So being able to know that moments of connection matter more than the checklist. Yeah, that's really good. Did you feel guilty? Just curious. Did you feel guilty at all, like blocking out your calendar or going and doing that? Or did you say, hey, if I do this, I'm not going to get this done today?
Yeah, I probably didn't feel guilty about going to have coffee, but I do find myself feeling guilty when my calendar starts to pile up with those sorts of activities more than feel should be specifically getting work done. I don't know, because I can see that work too, but I do, yeah, there probably is some guilt associated with that in my head of when lunches or coffees that I'm not actually at my desk for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah. No, and I think that's good. The only reason I point that out is because it's really easy for us to identify some of these things that we're either saying, hey, I did this and it worked and I see the benefits of it. But what's the thing that allows you to keep choosing that? Because most of the time, there's something that holds us back. And so that's why I just gave that example. Is it guilt? Do you feel bad? Do you see, does it give you anxiety when now you see the calendar imbalance, whatever it is, just recognize what that might be for you so that you can, there's this quote that says, what stands in the way becomes the way. So sometimes the first thing we got to really do is say, gosh, what gets in my way of actually doing that? So that we can address that and be able to have those moments more often. Thanks, Becky.
Yeah.
I remember writing in my journal, I found it a few years ago again. It said, I just want every morning to feel like Saturday morning. And I started to think about what that meant a few years ago. And really Saturday mornings were, I spent more time in my prayer chair. I journaled more. I enjoyed my coffee. I didn't rush. And when I started my business, I hadn't implemented that as part of my work. And then like you, Becky, I realized that my best ideas came in those moments. My most creative business ideas came then, my clarity on relationships. And so I flipped the script to say that was the work instead of emails were the work. And now I don't take any appointments before 10 a.m. And sometimes my prayer and journal time only goes till 8 or 8:30, but I'm not rushed. And if I'm there and a creative idea comes and I want to run with it, and I use another hour of that time to write it all out or call somebody that's popped in my head, that is the work for me now. And so I don't let anything get in the way of that. And it's made a huge difference.
I love that reframing of that is part of the work.
I would love to just give that a try. Like, that sounds amazing. And I'm not good at it. I shouldn't say that. I don't attempt it, and I'm not intentional about it. So I'm not going to say I'm not good at it. I'm just simply not doing it.
I was going to say, I'm in the process of implementing it.
That's right. There's been a few days where I've kind of done it.
Yeah, the days you do it, you tell me about it, and I can tell it's been a better day.
Yeah, it's true. I'm a slow learner.
I have another 2 o'clock on the Zoom line because it's a short week, which means you pack them in when you've got 4 days on the calendar instead of 5. I try not to do that, but here we are. Thank you.
Well, this was fun,
everyone.
This was good. This was really good.
Yes. And now, going into this weekend, maybe just think about how is it a wholehearted weekend? Because that's what I'm telling myself, which is a good practice for then deciding how it's a wholehearted week, because the weekends are usually a lot easier. But you all were so much fun, as always. I love talking with each one of you. And I'm always here, always around. I'm about to actually implement, speaking of learning from Rebecca, she has this out of office where she responds to emails. What is it, Tuesdays and Fridays?
Yeah.
Yes. which I love. So I'm about to implement that myself. And Carrie, you hit the nail on the head about, it's just about being intentional. And so to me, that's one of my first steps, just even deciding what are the things I want to be more intentional about. So you are not alone, my friend, over there. We are all still learning and all still trying to figure out what intentional feels like for us. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for letting me get to talk with you today.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
And see you next month.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye. Safe travels, Carrie.
Thank you so much. Bye, ladies.
Bye.